Hello and welcome to another edition of the Talking City podcast with myself, Alex James, and Chief City writer Simon Bajkowski. Simon, good morning, good afternoon. Are you well?
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are consuming this. I'm all right, Alex. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad. It was all a bit Truman Show that actually then for a minute, wasn't it? The introduction.
Never a bad thing, I would say.
Indeed. And at the risk of, here we go, here's a segue. At the risk of perhaps going round in circles or repeating ourselves, we're back talking about transfers. We're back talking, it's June. The window is open.
Nobody wants to talk about football, do they? It's transfers that people are interested in. Transfers. Let's have transfers. But yeah, stuff's happening actually, which is always nicer to talk about transfers when things are happening than when things are not, I would say.
Yeah, exactly. And you're expecting, or we're expecting, City to be pretty active, and based on the words of the chairman, pretty active pretty quickly as well.
Yeah, I mean the chairman. I don't think we've discussed the chairman's interview yet on the podcast. It was pretty. Pretty punchy stuff from Khaldoon Al Mubarak. He does this annual end of season interview with club media where he can get across any point that he wants to make, and he admitted that they should have been more aggressive in the window last summer, which was kind of already acknowledged, but acknowledged by Guardiola, but they're in black and white from him, and said, and that's why we bought 4 players in January, and that's why we're going to be very active this summer. And he said that not only were they looking to get players in this summer, but they're looking to get players in before the Club World Cup. They basically want to take next season's squad to the Club World Cup. He's treating that tournament as kind of the beginning of next season. Draw a line under what's gone before, and let's go to this Club World Cup with a squad that can win the tournament and put City on the right path for success next season. Now, the tournament starts next week. So, it's about 12 days away as we record today. But yeah, it means that City have to get their skates on basically to get 3 or 4 deals done if they want to live up to that billing from Khaldoon. Now, Khaldoon sometimes says things in these end of season things that don't pan out, but he's never like wildly off the mark. Like he did the interview on an afternoon where he'd spent the morning speaking to Cheeky Bagheeris and Hugo Rayana, Pep Guardiola and Ferran Soriano. So, he was pretty dialed in when he said this. And he's not one for making kind of lavish statements that are completely off reality. So I think we can expect a busy 2 weeks.
Yeah, and this window is only open until June 10th. So he's given himself, well, obviously there is a hard and fast deadline, but to get 3, 4, 5 deals over the line between now and I mean every club would like to do their transfer business early, whether there's a Club World Cup or not. And I'm sure City are no different. The sooner you can get the new signings in, the sooner they can bed in, the sooner you can make decisions on players who maybe might be moving on. But to try and get 3, 4, 5 players in between now and June the 10th feels ambitious, but the signs are that the wheels are kind of in motion already.
Yeah, I mean they've kind of made progress on Reinders from AC Milan. They sort of news this morning that they're expecting to complete a deal for Rayan Aït-Nouri, the Wolves left back, which is like, oh my God, City are signing a left back. What is going on at which is a real Aït-Nouri is an interesting one, because sort of even a few weeks ago it wasn't being suggested that kind of left back was the biggest priority, or the second biggest priority, or the third biggest priority. So, whether it has jumped up in priority or whether it is just kind of, it's a deal that can be done, and so they're doing it, and we're just not hearing necessarily about the other deals that are being done. So yeah, I think I think City are going to surprise us in this transfer window. I think there's going to be a few things that make you go, oh, and Aït-Nouri was definitely one of those.
And that's a position. I think we've spoken about this a few times, but no doubt over the past few years, you all have spoken about City and left backs. Well, I think you said in your piece it was Angelino who was the last sort of specialist left back signed. And just remind me how many games he played. It was either
I couldn't tell you how many games he played. He left after 6 months. I went on the 2019 preseason tour to the Far East, and we did the first game. And was it the first? Yeah, it must have been. It was the first game, and would you believe nobody stopped in the mix zone afterwards? So we were sort of like, oh, come on, this is a bit rubbish, isn't it? So we agreed to speak to a player at training the following day and get a later train back to Shanghai, and it was Angelino, and new signing back, homegrown player back at the club, and oh, it must be great to be back. Yeah. And what did Pep tell you about coming? I've not spoken to Pep. We're like, oh, right, and it was kind of like. So this is the new left back that's going to solve everything that apparently Pep hasn't even spoken to about coming back. So, I mean, he's about 10 meters away from you, so you can say hello now. But so yeah, the writing seemed on the wall even then. He lasted 6 months, and then City got an obscene amount of money for him from RB Leipzig. He's done well since. A bit harsh on him, but it kind of looked from the start like he was never going to be a City player, and he never really was. And then since then, who've we had? I guess Zinchenko played a lot on the left. João Cancelo became a sort of maverick left back. We had Nathan Ake, we had Rico Lewis, we had Josko Gvardiol, we've had Nico O'Reilly, and now we might actually be getting a left back for the first time in 6 years, yeah.
And that also signals a change in sort of tactic, I guess, from Pep Guardiola, or certainly the option to change from what has previously been either makeshift fullbacks or more recognised central defenders, e.g. Gvardiol, playing on the left. Like Gvardiol's obviously spent the last portion of the season playing in the middle, which is his position, and you would suspect is the long-term position for him, despite how well he did on the left. But that does signify a slight shift in thinking, I guess, from Guardiola. Or am I reading too much into it? I can also read into it what the futures of a John Stones or whoever who might be deemed either too perhaps injury prone or further down the pecking order in the middle, that therefore he won't be needed to step in at fullback if a new right back and a new left back arrive. But I just like to speculate, so you can tell me the actual the actual thinking here.
No, I think that's it. It does kind of like open up. You would think that sort of, well, Nathan Ake covers left back, and then you think, well, if they sign an actual left back and they've got Gvardiol and they've got Rico Lewis and what's he called? Nico O'Reilly, who, sorry, he's gone from my list of potential left backs because I'm treating him as a midfielder, but back at left back, you've got players that can cover, then maybe you think, well, maybe you don't need to keep Nathan Ake if you don't want to keep Nathan Ake. I still think they will keep Nathan Ake, but maybe that's another surprise that's coming along. So yeah, but also, like, I mean, I wrote a piece today as well that like fullbacks are a key position, and fullbacks is kind of what Pep made a key position in that summer of 2017 when 4 left and 3 came in, and they are fundamental to his way of football. So it kind of makes sense to have at least one specialist in the position that can do exactly what you want.
Yeah, and even, I mean, there's a lot of parallels with that 2017 summer and now, I think, isn't there? I think you alluded to it in that piece. And fullback has probably become even more significant a position in the 10 years or 8 years since then. Like, nobody was talking about fullbacks. When Kyle Walker signed, nobody was really talking about inverted fullbacks and fullbacks doing this, that, and the other, and playing in midfield spaces and stuff. Whereas now you can't move for talk about how important fullbacks are. And City have played the last few seasons with very few or none on the left.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they played the last season with like 2 number 10s at fullback, which, Guardiola rightly said was just a bit mad, really. The old fine line between genius and madness. But it's it's one of those where like an early transfer will please fans and a left back transfer will please fans. But it just kind of, like I say, signing that specialist just makes you feel like they won't be leaving as much to kind of. It's hard because Guardiola really likes a fluid squad where he's got a small squad with players who can sort of play a number of different positions, but you don't want to be able to say. It's difficult if you say, well, Manu Akanji can play right back, centre back, and left back, and you say, right, well, he'll miss 3 months of the season with injury. Nathan Ake can play left back and centre. And I've not checked up on Aït-Nouri's injury availability, but I assume it's pretty good. And just having, it's another spot in the team that you don't have to think about, in the same way that like Guardiola, now you could just put Guardiola at centre back for 38 league games, and he'd play every week and be a 7, 8 out of 10. So it's what City need from this window are experienced players who can come straight into the first team and slot straight in. And I think Aït-Nouri would certainly fit that on, with the caveat that, he's not a complete player, but like there's a ceiling for him to get even better.
Yeah. And he's not a complete player, but that's partly because he's played so often in that Wolves side as a wing back as well. He's been asked to do something there that is attack, is get forward, is contribute loads and loads of points in fantasy football, but not necessarily become an all-rounded defender. But that's, as you say, that's a ceiling he can attain at City. And he arrives, I can't remember how old he is off the top of my head now, but he arrives with loads and loads of senior experience and loads of Premier League experience as well, which is something we saw in in January. There was a lack of that, and I know those were signings for the future as well, but only Omar Marmoush really kind of forced his way into any kind of regular football in January, didn't you? And as you said, City need maybe 2 or 3 who can come and slot straight in if required, and Reinders probably fits that. Well, he definitely does fits that bill as well. He's just been named Serie A midfielder of the year, I think, in a whatever that niche Serie A award ceremony is. But he's someone who's at an age, mid-20s, international footballer who can come in and make a difference as well if City are able to push that one through, and all signs suggest that they probably will.
Yeah, I never know the hierarchy, but if Scott McTominay's got MVP of like Scott McTominay's got the league's best player, can you actually have a best midfielder? But he has.
Perhaps they've discounted MVP and the ridiculousness of having an MVP award. I'm not having that.
Yeah, quite possibly. Yeah, no, it's. I mean, I would agree with you, but also I just say if it's Naples, anything goes. Let it happen. Yeah, he's 23, Aït-Nouri, so he's sort of coming into his prime years, and also he's got a long career ahead of him and things to improve. But yeah, and Reinders and it's just a busy time, as you would expect for a club that have declared they're going to sign everyone in the next 12 days.
Yeah.
It is. There are. I mean, the thing is as well, what you have to think about is that kind of City could line up these deals before the end of the season, but for the first time in ages, they couldn't actually make loads of progress on them because Champions League wasn't confirmed until the final day. So everyone was kind of waiting, and the conversations that would normally have been had with either players that you want to sign or players that you don't want to be a part of the squad for next season and things like that would have happened in like April last year have been left till kind of the middle of the end of May this year. So everything's kind of been bottled up almost, and now we're starting to see the release of that. And yeah, it makes for a very active time. But also, City wanted to do this kind of rebuild last summer, and then they started it in January. So they've had a long time to look and think, we can see the problems in this team, and so like, how do we fix it? So as daunting as it may seem to get all this business done early, like, they've had a long time to think about it and put a few things in place, and they should kind of know what they need by now.
Yeah, and they've had Viana and Begiristain working in tandem as well, haven't they? Which, as you said, has enabled a significant amount of forward planning to be done as this crossover period between the two comes into view, albeit hampered by not knowing whether they're going to be in the Champions League until that second goal at Craven Cottage on the last day of the season. How does all this fit with players who might be going out of City? And I think we've touched on it a couple of times, or certainly we have on this podcast, that there's going to be, if you want a slimmer squad and you want 4 or 5 players coming in, that means 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 players going out. And so far that list probably totals De Bruyne. Well, it does total De Bruyne. Are we likely to see, do you think, much movement in the next 10 days on that front? Or is that something that is going to be, I guess, put off until the second window, if you like, which I realise is only about a week after the first window shuts? But is it going to be a case of, let's get these players in the building, the ones we want, as quickly as we can, and then here's our 30 players, let's figure out who we don't need and try and offload them come the middle of next month? And I guess the indication will be when the Club World Cup squad departs and some players are not in it.
Yes. Yeah, it's always usually more difficult for departures than bringing in, especially in this situation. Also kind of like hindered a bit by injuries that have cropped up. Mateo Kovacic has had surgery on his Achilles. That means he's out for 3 months. So he's basically out until a month into the new season. The Calvin Phillips, the lesser spotted Calvin Phillips, has had the same. So he's out till August. And it's one of those, like, they will definitely want to offload Phillips and will kind of struggle more to offload him now that he's injured. Kovacic is a player that could leave, but kind of, again, more difficult to find a buyer for him if he's injured and if he's sort of, out for the start of the season, basically, and won't have had a pre-season. You look at like Jack Grealish and you think, who will come in for him? These are kind of things that are more difficult. City are focused on incomings at the minute anyway. But I'm not sure there's anyone that's kind of like, well, other than James McAtee, really, but he's sort of got England duty as well, who's like running off to say, I want to leave, I want to move, here I am getting a move, bringing an offer to the club. I'm not sure anyone's kind of at that point at the minute. So I think departures will take a bit longer. And again, I'm kind of more inclined to think there will be more players leaving than kind of Pep suggested in that final press conference when he, it won't be a big change. Everyone's under contract. I kind of think there will have to be a few that leave just by default, because if you bring in players in and you've already got a bigger squad than the manager wants, you are going to have some exits, but I think that will take a bit more time.
Yeah, there's quite a few, isn't there? You sort of mentioned a couple of them there, like Kovacic, who are, in some ways, you'd be a little bit surprised if they let these kinds of players go, but you wouldn't hang your hat on Kovacic, Ake, Bernardo, Edison, Gundowan. Like, there's loads of players who you wouldn't necessarily say, we need to get rid of them, but you also wouldn't hang your hat on them being part of this City 2.0 or 3.0 or whichever reincarnation of Guardiola City are up to now.
5. We're on 5 yet. I feel like we might be on 5.
It's like the Fast and Furious.
Yeah, I mean, like, yeah, it's like Gundowan has a contract extension and spoke last week about feeling still at home in Manchester with him and his family and all this, and he's spoken since the season ended about wanting to stay and or like the final weeks of the season about wanting to stay and being happy that he's staying and all this, but there's still that question mark on him. There's a few sort of reports that he was in Turkey for talks with Galatasaray. And like, yeah, I still don't see him leaving from what people are telling me at the minute. But if he's having talks with Galatasaray, then it's clearly an option. And yeah, I think, everyone's smart enough to, or that the players are smart enough to sort of want to line up things. But I think there's uncertainty around the squad. Like, I don't think anyone is as safe as they have been because they've been a poor season, but also because Hugo Viana's come in and it's a fresh pair of eyes. And, Pep said a few weeks ago that, Hugo Viana has come in and his remit has been tell us the truth. Like, we don't want you coming in saying, oh, everything's wonderful. You guys are amazing. Never mind about that blip where you were awful for 4 months. Let's just carry on. They want like the unvarnished, what changes do we need to make to win again? And that is what is starting to be kind of carried out.
Yeah, and I think the Club World Cup obviously will give us a few indications once we know who's travelling to that, and I think we'll probably get into the sort of meat and drink of the Club World Cup on the next pod or on another pod, from how much everyone is looking forward to it or not, from a City perspective. I think that tournament, when City's first game, something like the 18th, is it, of
18th,
June?
yeah.
So what's that? Just over 2 weeks away, and as we've just been discussing, there's a lot that can change in those 2 weeks. So that'll probably be the first kind of indication as to what City are thinking in terms of next season. I would suggest. I think you probably agree with that, Si.
Sorry, say that again.
That Club World Cup sort of squad, and then how City go about it, who plays, etc., will probably kind of determine where exits might be, who's going to be a key player, who's perhaps found themselves on the fringes, who's not travelled, etc.
I think so, although I would say I would be surprised if, Pep decided to leave at home everyone who could leave. I would be very surprised if he's like, right, Jack Grealish, Bernardo Silva, Ilkay Gundowan, goodbye. Might see you in a few weeks if you've not found a club. I think sort of anyone who is there will go, and then kind of drop off as and when. I mean, also for those players, like if you're those players and their representatives, like if you're not staying at City, chances are you might want to find another club who is probably at the Club World Cup because it's 32 of the best teams. And so, it's probably not a bad idea to go anyway, even if you're not thinking of staying permanently at City. But I would expect it will be a big squad that Guardiola takes. And I think it's more likely to be sort of in the lineups for matches. If say Grealish is nowhere near playing again, things like that, rather than kind of him being left at home completely.
Yeah, that's probably fair. Well, in fact, it is fair. And that's one we can get into. That's one we can get into next time. But Si has quite rightly said that it's a busy time for City, so I'm sure he's going to go and dig up half a dozen transfer stories now to fill his week with, and fill the column inches of the MEM with. So we will leave it there for today. But thanks as always for watching and for listening, and we'll see you soon.